Hi, hey, hello, Clark Singleton here, and today we are talking flat wound strings. I primarily have been a round wound string player for a very long time, and I purchased this bass, which is a Pino Palladino custom shop Fender bass from a buddy of mine, and it had flats on it, and I said, you know what? I should keep flats on this bass. So I did, and I have absolutely been loving it. Now, I wanted to talk to you, whoever you are listening to this video, who is maybe a flats guy and going, well, yeah, that is true about flats. Or you're a round wound guy and you're going to go, okay, well, maybe I can do some flats in my life and in my bass life. But let me go over like 7 or 8 things with you. Number one, I had a buddy of mine when I was in college who swore by flats. And I would go to jams and he would have flat wound strings and I would play his bass and it felt slimy. The first thing that I remember, the first thing that I like, what I would recall about flat wounds is that they felt slimy. I don't know why that word in particular stuck with me with flat wounds, but he created this block to where I didn't want to play flat wounds for a while. There's a common thread that goes along with some of these, and you just kind of have to get used to how it feels, and it is a different string, but you get used to the sliminess, I'll say. Number two, a main difference for me was the attack and how it feels to attack the string. You don't get as much attack and like presence, the beginning of the note, with the flat wound strings. Number three, talking about rock music, there are a few bass players, rock bass players that play flats. Steve Harris, for example, and he does a great job of it. And I had to figure out what tone I wanted to get with these flats and how to play this bass differently because it just reacts differently with these flats on it. So I had to figure out what was the right amount of pressure with my right hand because I didn't want it to sound like that. You know, maybe that's a particular tone that you'll go for with some things, but for me, I didn't want that to be happening. So I really had to pay attention to the techniques that I was using, particularly in rock music, and like playing it hard and it not responding the same way. Also with like just the consistency of the string is so different from a round wound string. Number four, using effects pedals with flat wound strings is very, very different. I'm not going to go in and do a bunch of different pedals, but I will give you an example of the Aguilar filter twin that I've got down there. Just understanding that the information is so different between a round wound and a flat wound string bass. And how it goes into a pedal. So if you got your pedal board and you got it all set up, and you've been playing round wounds, don't expect it to be the same whatsoever when you plug in a bass with flat wounds. The information will be completely different. So here's it without the pedal. That's it with the filter twin. The information is still really cool and it sounds really cool. It's just going to be very, very different. Number five, I felt like I played slower on flat wounds than I did round wound basses. And I think it's because I just wasn't used to it, or I'm still getting used to it, I guess. I felt like I got tripped up a lot more, and all the different techniques that I was trying to use from being a round wound player two flatwounds was just not working. So I've really had to spend time playing the notes slower and like get a really good sound out of these flatwounds. I feel like they take more time and they're less forgiving. And it's like if you hit a bad note, you hit a bad note. You know what I mean? So that kind of goes into number 6, which is they just sound different to my ears. So a lot of it is just getting used to this particular string and how it sounds. When I play that on a Roundwound, it sounds so different. And I almost sounded like I wasn't playing. But taking this to different sessions, playing it on different recordings, a bass with flatwounds, and this is why I think that you should get used to this as a bass player, as a professional bass player, getting used to a bass with flats, it sits different in the mix. It really does. And if you can't get it with flats, you tried a P bass, you tried a jazz bass, you tried your fancy boutique whatever bass, maybe flats is the answer for you. It just sits in a different place in the music, and like all those old Motown records, all of that stuff, it has a special place in the music. So maybe that's the answer. But you have to really listen to the instrument and spend time with it like you did at the very, very beginning with your Roundwounds and your bass, and you're trying to figure out what bass sounds like. You really have to like dive into the sound. So I would just play long notes. Also working on great technique, making sure your technique is fit. Again, the flatwounds will really check you on that. Such a cool tone. It still feels weird to me, but I'm getting used to it. It's going to be a long process being a Roundwound player for so long, but it's such a cool sound and a unique sound that you can't get with Roundwound strings. All right, number 7. I'm going to talk about 2 different techniques that you can use on the bass. So number 7 is slapping. Now, a lot of people think, well, like slapping, well, first of all, slapping on a P bass, some people think that's a faux pas. I don't personally, but slapping with flatwounds? Are you crazy? Well, I did it. And the first time that I did it, there was a particular sound in a particular song that I was reminded of, and it was Shaky Ground. I don't know if it's flats. I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would put money on it that those are flat wound strings and it slapped. That's what it sounds like to me. And I slapped for the first time and I was like, that is the sound. Tried to get it on Roundwounds. Couldn't do it. I think that's the sound. So there you have it. Slap on flatwounds is a thing. It can be done. Give it a shot. Okay, last thing, number 8. I'm going to add a bonus one here. Chords. So one of my favorite bass players, and has been for the past couple of years, is Thundercat. And he plays flatwound strings. And I was so curious as to why he was playing flatwounds, because for me, as I've listed before, it's like, well, I can play faster, I can get away with more stuff with roundwounds, I can use different effects, and I'm used to using my effects with roundwounds, all of these different things. And I was trying to find interviews with him on YouTube about talking about flats. Couldn't really do it. Still not sure why he does it, but he makes it work. If you know Thundercat, you know he makes it work. If you don't know Thundercat, check out Thundercat because it's absolutely amazing. And he just defies all these things that I'm talking about and all the things that I've had difficulty with. And he just makes it work for him. And you know what? You can do that too. you can make it work for you. So I played chords with these flatwounds, and I realized that because the information is different, that chords seem to work better on flatwounds. You know, it seems like maybe because there's less information and less moving around that I can get away. You know, you can play chords up here. Like on a roundwound bass, it sounds cool, but it seemed like I could get chords down here that wouldn't sound good otherwise on a roundwound bass and get away with it. Even chords like that. Sharp 11 chord. You can get away with it. It still sounds cool. So, Thundercat, thank you for hipping me to that. And thanks to my buddy that sold me this bass, because I have gained so much knowledge about playing with flats because of this bass. If you learned something today, please like this video. Give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel. It helps so much. I'll leave a link to some different stuff in the description. And as always, rock and roll and never die.